Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of Against the Flow. This is the very first episode of my podcast that I'm starting, and I wanted to do this for many reasons that I will go over in the podcast. But for the very first episode, I pretty much introduce myself and I talk about some things that has been on my mind, and hopefully you find this very valuable. And let's get into the first episode of Against the Flow. So a little bit about myself. I am a music producer. I produce mostly EDM and hip hop rap beats. And my main goal pretty much with my music is to build a brand around my music, or around my, I guess, like a personal brand, and release music and eventually go on tour. So the reason why I wanted to start this podcast is to talk about things that I've been thinking about ever since I started making music, or starting on my music journey as a music producer. And I also wanted to bring guests on to get their 2 cents and their opinions on some of the things that they think about, and that may or may not challenge the social norms, hence Against the Flow. Because as artists, I feel like we see the world different, and we have a different mindset from majority of the people that are doctors or lawyers that require academics, like the more schooling route. And so I decided to start this podcast that I've been wanting to start for a really long time now. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about, is the process of starting something. I do know that starting something can be really hard, and it takes a lot to start something, and I know it takes a lot more to stay consistent after starting, because we have all of these ideas and all of these things that we want to do, that we want to say, but how do we know to actually do it, or when do we know to do it? And that's one of the things that I want to touch on, because I've been wanting to start this podcast for a few months now, or it's been a while. And so I finally set the time out, and I have the courage to finally start it. And when you start something, it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to have you scratch your head a lot. It's supposed to make you confused and lost, because you don't know what you don't know. Because how are you supposed to know what something is if you don't try it? One of the things that I kind of incorporate this with, or compare it to, is at a buffet. How do you know if you don't like something unless you try? So, for example, you might try the shrimp and you don't like it. So you know that in your head you decide that you don't like the shrimp. You now know that you don't like it. And so then you might go and try the chicken, and you might like that more or less, and pretty much the same thing applies, or it continues to apply. I think the important thing to really learn from starting something is that you're supposed to suck at it. Because when you compare your tracks to your idols that you look up to, your favorite songs by them, you can tell that there's a huge gap between what you created and what they created. But what you created may be what the information that you learned in a week or two, or like a year or a month. But your favorite artist or band or whatever, one song or one album or EP, that alone has hours and hours and years of knowledge and work put into it. And I think that's one of the things that is kind of hard to grasp, to let yourself fail and let yourself make bad music, because everything is a learning process. You kind of have to make bad music in order to make good music. And that's the one thing that I struggle with, because I kept starting these ideas and not finishing it and kind of scared to put it out. And that's just the process of starting something. You're not supposed to be good at it. But at the same time, you shouldn't judge yourself for not doing what your idols can do, because again, there's a gap of knowledge and experience and time that was put into a certain project. So that's one of the things that I found myself kind of thinking about when, going onto this music journey. um, Another thing that I kind of experienced when starting something is um, watching tutorials, reading books, or reading online books, ebooks, PDF books, just obtaining knowledge in general, gaining information on what you want to learn is um, is so crucial, because um, you may not know what something means. Like, for example, when I started, I was on GarageBand. I had no clue, no idea what MIDI was, what loops were, what a synth was. And it took me forever to know what sampling was. I would hear that term get tossed around a lot, but I never knew exactly what it meant. And so I would watch tutorials, read books on it, and um, when I would watch something or tutorial read up about compression, let's just use this as an example. I would do my research on compression, just only compression. And then the term sidechain compression gets thrown around. And I may want to look into that. What is sidechain compression? And who knows, when you look up what sidechain compression is, you might run across what EQ is, or what automations are. And it's just this learning process of obtaining knowledge. And at the same time, you're still kind of lost in grasping what these terms mean, or what they do, or how it fits in the mix, and just all these things that you don't know. But it's good because you're learning, and throughout time you apply what you have learned and you get better at it. And that's just the process when you start anything. It doesn't matter what it is. But my main process is in music, so I'm just going to stay in my lane and talk about what I know. So those are just some of the few things that I've learned throughout my music career or my music journey. Is when you start something, it's not supposed to be easy, and you are supposed to make bad music. You're supposed to let yourself fail. At the same time, you can't judge yourself. You can't compare yourself and judge yourself based on what others have created. It's best to go at your own pace, learn as much as you can, and just show up every day. When you start something, staying consistent really, really helps. When you are learning every day and you're trying your best. So when you obtain this knowledge and you apply it every day more and more, it builds up to this skill and this power that you have to create what you want to put out that vision and be able to do what your idols do. And that's just the process of starting something. And whether it's good or bad, that's subjective. I put out a track that I worked on that I didn't think it would do good. I mean, it was a great track, but I didn't think it would do that good. So I put it on SoundCloud, and it just went crazy. Like for me as a beginner, it did a lot better than I expected. On the other hand, I put out a project or put out a single that I thought was my best work yet. And this was after the release of the last song that I mentioned. I put out the track and it didn't do as well as the previous one. And I was confused because I was thinking this should have been, better or whatever. So that's one of the hard things I had to learn, because not all the tracks that you make will get the same result, or every track has its own, type of results or kind of reaction that the consumer will get. So that's one of the things that I had to learn, is not to, judge myself on that, and just try your best, and learn every day and apply. And sometimes what you make may not be the best. I think to wrap this up, the most important thing when you're starting out is to just remind yourself it's part of the process. It's okay to feel lost. It's not always rainbows and sunshine. Just, there are darker days. But when you keep showing up and you keep learning and keep trying your best, you'll eventually be where your idols are at. And, you'll look back a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and actually hear your progress with your music. And so those are just some things to keep in mind with that. So wrapping up, just show up every day and learn as much as you can, and remember to don't judge yourself. So that wraps up the first episode of Against the Flow. And I hope you guys found a lot of value in it, because there's a lot of gems that I talked about, and there's a lot of personal stuff that I went through and personal experience that I included in this podcast. So I would really appreciate your feedback, your comments, your share, your like, and just ideas, like what you thought about it, what I could have done better, what do you agree with or disagree with. Just let me know, and I'll talk to you guys. And this is my first episode, and related to the topic that I talked about. This is my first episode, so I will keep doing this and try to find ways to make it better in terms of the video recording, the sound quality, the audio, and I'm kind of going off my notes here, but eventually one day I want to get to the point where I can do it naturally. But this is my first episode, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, comment, share, and I will see you guys next time.